Hello, good morning. How's it going? I need to check. Hey, Yatsuki, how's it going? I need to check actually if my computer time is correct. It is not, and I'm. That's really weird. You can't adjust the clock, or you can in Windows. You have to go in and manually adjust it. But I mean, it should be on time, and it's not. It's actually 3 minutes wrong, which is kind of messed up. Which is, not what you want, right? Where were we? What do I have to do? Right. Romancer, Runi, Fuxia, Atsuki, what up? How's it going? So, some feedback Friday on one painting today. Romancer living in the future. Yeah, it seems like it. Crazy. Oh, and I saw on Facebook that 3 years ago we painted the cosmic banana. Those were the days. Season 2 Cosmic Banana, I think. Hey, Yannis, how's it going? Bruno Romanos and Mel, what's good? Hilarious. Hilarious. So that's Irina's. We will have a look at and comment on. I think I will randomly draw something. I think that's a lot more easier, a lot more straightforward. Hey, Morphia. Runis. It is Runi. Runitochka. Right? Hardcover 3 contender. Hey, Nidu. What's good? Right, so hey, Pacobra. How's it going? How's it going? Right, so I'm gonna play around with today. I'm gonna play around with that sketching technique again. It's a really fun one. So I'll do that. I'll do that while giving her some feedback. I doubt the feedback will be long, but there is some things there I think worth mentioning. Hey, Bob Shimizu, how's it going? Yeah, the Pontiff technique. Is that what it's officially branded as? Pacobra, you finished your stream? That's cool. I gotta add you then. Follow so I see when you're online, so I can, if I'm around, give you some support. 1 second, I need to fix a thing here. Right. Whoa. All right, you'll hear my daughter in the background. Timer. Let's start the timer. Oh, give me a topic, by the way. First come, first serve. Whatever comes to mind. Ideally fantasy. Hey, Gria, how's it going? Neither. If you want to follow, I'm not gonna make you follow me. If you like it, if you like what you're seeing, go ahead. I'm not gonna pitch you some sale pitch. Pacobra, okay, orc bard. Or do you mean? I don't know what you mean. So Pacobra was fast as hell. Let's start a timer. And I'm gonna give Runi Tochka, aka Irina, some feedback while I'm sketching a orc bard. You're not gonna see the full image because this is in the way. But when I'm done doing feedback, I'll swap over. Anyway, so I think the face is fantastically painted. I assume it's very much photo referenced. Rolling my R's. Oh yeah, rolling. Regardless if the photo is photo sourced or not. I mean, as in you're looking at reference. It's a really good face. What certain things though, which is kind of indicative of Bruno, of someone who's not very comfortable with the technique, is something I call feathering. And you can see that in line artists that are not accustomed to doing a lot of line art or sketching. You can see it in a lot of beginner artists, and it's like that. When they're making a line, they're not making the line in a singular move. They are like, and I call that feathering. Like you're making feathers and constructing a wing out, you know. Hey, Art of Jim, how's it going? Weeping Jay, what's good? Captain Bounce, ow! Good morning. All right, so you can see that if you look at the background and a lot of the marks over here on the left side of the painting, and also in the face, a lot of what's happening there is like feathering, but the feathering isn't like I tried to explain for doing lines, but it's actually in terms of marks. So what happens when you're doing that to, I mean, that's not a technical term, feathering, by the way. It's my own creation, so take it with, you know, it's not a, if you talk to someone else about it, they will be like feathering. So it's my own invention, right? So just make sure that you can't mention it to anyone else who hasn't heard the explanation. They won't get it. It's not like line weight. Line weight is universal across the board. Everyone understands it, right? So just as a heads up. Anyways, so you can see it on the brush marks, and what that does is that it separates. Each mark becomes its own entity. And chicken scratching, yeah, that's another one. And what happens is that each mark becomes its own entity, and I think it's fine in terms of, let's say, it's fine in terms of fine art, because you can make a statement in that sense that whatever you're painting is not the purpose, but it's the marks themselves that becomes the object of observation in a painting, in fine art painting, and that's absolutely valid thing to do, you know, as an expression of fine art, right? But as an illustration, there's a very few artists that are able to wrangle their brush marks in a way that you've done on the left side of your painting that makes it look good. And more so than not, it is a sign of lack of confidence in marks and a lack of understanding of mark making. So one good example of that, if you look at the lower arm and the marks going around the arm, the lower part of the arm, tricep area, underneath the bicep, you can see a lot of brush marks going up to the arm, but not fully. And you've been doing brush marks around the arm, tracing the shape of the arm without the marks touching. And the same goes for by the hand, same goes for over here. It's like there's a gravity around this shape, and any mark you're making or bouncing off, or it's like magnetism, like repelling magnetism, right? So that when you make a brush mark, it's not going all the way. You're hugging the shape, you're hugging the silhouette, and it becomes this noise, and they become entities themselves. What you need to do is practice this, where you are not afraid of going into the shape with a brush mark, and then either erasing or making a mark over to create a tension there, or a cutoff. And what you can do is, if you don't want that knife sharp edge between the arm and the background, you can manually go in and soften that edge by carefully placing marks that will alleviate the sharpness. But because now what you're doing is that you're like ghosting the silhouettes, and it becomes this unnecessary noise. And you can see it in the face in a different way, because a lot of your brush marks in that sense are not going with the volume. There is some indications here that we can see they are going with the volume, but then there's a lot of marks that are just slapped on, and it creates this noise. If you would rotate the image, we can almost find new pathways of the brush marks as we turn them, because we read them differently. And that's in regard, not in regard to the volume, right? So that you're making noises that lets there's no clear read. The biggest culprit is in the forehead. So it's really important that when you make marks, if you're going to have this painterly style, is that you're considering direction and volume and material. And a lot of it, if you build it a base up, a good example of this is Jamie Jones. If you can find Jamie Jones, you can see a lot of noise and unnecessary marks that are going in different directions. And you can see here too, like the ghosting of the volumes. And there's similar issue with the face, that the marks are going a little bit all different directions. They're good modeling, and then there is not good modeling. And it's really important that you try to gauge that correctly. I'm gonna just 1 second. So a good example of this is tooting my own horn here, but an example of this is my portrait of Max. Even though the marks are extremely heavy, they're not very subtle. You can see change in volume, in direction, and intent in the marks. You can see how I paint out to the edge and then paint into and then clean the edge. There's no ghosting involved, or feathering. So it's really important that you do try to deal with that. And like I started saying, a good example of that is Jamie Jones. And in terms of the face and volumes and marks, a really good example is Jamie Jones. And what Jamie Jones does is that he lays a mark carefully down, and then when that mark is as solid as he can make it, he does it over and over and over again until the mark is perfect. He goes to the next step, and the next step being, he layers the painting on top and maintaining the indication of volume throughout his painting. And there's always this tendency, that a lot of artists do, is that we repaint an area too much. We are not letting it be clean and expressive and as it should be. So when you're doing this painterly style, you can help maintaining that, like I said, about painting over the volume and then erasing away the thing that you want to be on top of the background, so if you want to. Yeah, follow the volume. It is true. I mean, you got to paint with the volume, right? I don't rotate the canvas, no. Because I don't rotate my canvas when I'm painting with oil. It's a little bit tricky. Anyways, so that's the biggest issue. And then we're going to go to a little bit of nitpicks. Not too much, so whatever is these comments are not the major flaws, but I think they're worth considering. So the lower half of the painting, the modeling on the shirt is really good. Down here, everything is undefined and very muddy. There's a lot of dirty color transitions. You might want to take a step back and consider, like, in order for you to save the bottom of the painting, you have to go in and clean up a lot of the grays, because it's very muddy and very dirty hues in there. Most likely you've sampled too much and overlaid colors too much, so there's no confident transitions. Much like in her shirt, there's a lot more confident transitions of hues and values. I get it that you want to blend it so we don't look down there too much, but it's this whole area is making it look very rough and not clean. Captain Bose, yeah, absolutely. I think it is the nature of the media, right? In animation, you do lines way more than painting. With painting, you don't really do super clean line art. So I think that's the biggest difference, and for animators, it makes a lot of sense to be able to rotate. Sure, Rooney. if you look at the painting, a lot of the values are very close to each other in hue and value. So there's not a lot of hard transitions, hard modeling, or deliberate marks. If we would increase the color, you'd start to see more separation, right? If you look at values, there is very little value separation, so a lot of it is just mush. So what I mean is this whole section, it's an even amount of granularity. Hey, Charlie Lowe, how's it going? So a lot of it is the same, right? So you then have to separate the two. One thing you could do, like is in her hair, right? There's a lot of information here without high contrast. But you can still see the separation of volumes, separation of information. While here, if you would model your lower half more like on the right side, where there's low contrast but definition, you could still do the same. You can still start to hit some of the edges a little bit harder, indicate volumes a little bit better, and maintain. You can easily maintain the same hue, but work on marks a bit better. So you go in and work edges more or less, or you slightly increase hue variation and work on edges just to unmuddy that area. You can still have it low, like low focus, but at the moment it doesn't carry your painting. It doesn't help us look at the painting. It detracts from the quality. Gria, yeah, you absolutely have to put effort into your lost edges. They have to support the painting, because the idea behind the lost edges is to relax our brain, that we don't need to worry about that area too much, so that we can look at where the highest contrast is. But if the lower priority focal areas are distracting or detracting from the quality of the painting, the reason why they're there is counterproductive. It's the same with like your round 2, Gria, with the wolf and the Red Riding Hood. Is the example of the woods behind her. I mentioned there's not enough information there to create fidelity into the painting, but you don't want it to be high contrast, and you don't want it to just be mush, because you're leveling out the painting too much. So you got to find a balance between those things. Right, anyways. So another point of feedback would be the finger sizes are way too varied, especially here in this hand. And the negative space there makes it look like she has a really big fat finger. So I'd say you wanna work on your fingers a little bit more, especially for the first time now. I see she is eating a donut. That's really hard to see. You need to push the light a bit better on the donut, and because there's such a high contrast between fingers and donut, the fingers take over and the donut disappears, and we don't see the donut. And that's something you'd want to be careful with, especially as it's a focal area. You really got to spend a lot of time there to really author that part of the painting correctly. And another point is I think it has to do with subtleties, but it's about the level of brightness on the white. I think there's a lot of parts of her that are blown out, the whites. We do not see puns. Especially on this arm and this and the candy. It's like you can't go whiter than white, so it just becomes blown out and all the values are flat. And I think you gotta I think there's a huge amount of really successful areas and granularity of detail. But you gotta bring that through with probably some pore details, like the pores. You can see that there's a texture. You know, especially if you want it like specular highlights on her head, which you're kind of not having. But it can't be much. It has to be subtle. And also the modeling with volumes on her hand is a bit wrong here. The thumb looks off. And the intensity of details on the horns, you could probably relax a little bit and bring in a little bit more light. It feels a little bit overworked in that area. Or high contrast. Hey, Crosshatch, how's it going? I think the shoulder, I think it works well. It doesn't stand out, but I think it's I think there's some issues. I think it's this length or it's a lack of indication of structure. And I think you need to warp the size a little bit more. But it's weird, this fisheye. So it's about finding the right balance of indicating the arm is going forward, shift in arm size, indication of underlying structure, because without it we get the point but it doesn't translate. I mean, it doesn't need to be super defined, but it needs to be indications of it. And not everyone has like chiseled arms, right? And there's a lot of, you can suggest it with just one small mark rather than like I'm a bodybuilder. So like I said, you might wanna lessen the contrast of the donuts and fingers. To nice, to help pop the interaction. His donuts are gonna be soft. Hey, SFOK, how's it going? Um, yeah, and this area is weird. There's a lot of things like that happening. And I'd make the highlights harder on the candy. And make sure that there's hue variations, because if it's have a high specularity, it'll attach, it will adopt a lot of colors because it will reflect. Specularity, you know, if there's something specular and has shininess, it's more or less a mirror. So you gotta make sure that. Oh, why are you fucking? I can make it black and white. Absolutely. Boink. The values are pretty good. You can see that in the color version. It reads really well. The reason why you can see it, because you can see it like this. You can clear hierarchy of values. What you would like though, if you zoom out like this, you can see that the candy in the back is quite high contrast, and it becomes a part of her. That is not something you might not want. You know, you might want to push that back a bit, perhaps. I don't know what your intentions, if she has candy wings, or I don't know what the idea is. Follow the form. You need to have better form. You need to also not tangent with the strap. But overall, it works really well. But all these things that I mentioned, it should help the painting. And I could even nitpick more, but I don't think it's necessary. There's a tangent with the butterfly and her dress. I would fix that. And I think her there's something wrong here. And shouldn't she have the light is coming in like that, right? Shouldn't maybe have a little bit more cast shadow? Maybe. Why is the text on top? That's Arena, I don't know. For Cobra, what we would find analyzing Rembrandt? That would be fun. Also, as a last little note, if you're making highlights, especially on like wet surfaces, don't only have one color. It's an old painting technique, and if you have the ability to go and look at like realistic painters and eyes and what they're doing, if you have ability to go look closer, is that what they do, for example, for a highlight, is they're not using white as a highlight. They're using, let's say, yellow, pink, and blue with the white to create this kind of prisma effect, prismatic, like reflections and complexity. So when you're doing, let's say, highlights in an eye, add a hue to the highlight, and what will happen is the highlight will vibrate. It will come alive much more than just a singular tone, a highlight. Yeah, so it's like at the edge of the light. You can see it in a lot of through lenses. If you say lens effects, the lens effect isn't a singular gradient from white to gray. There's a prismatic effect because it's glass. Glass bends and directs light. So a wet surface acts the same way. So it's more or less a form of mirror, like I said about the candy, and it reflects different wavelengths differently. So if you add prisma or light, let me see if I have on that max one, if I have an example of it. No, I didn't do it on this one. You can see it on the glasses. I have varied the light. There is subtle blue in the highlight on his eye, but it's not very not very punctuated, so you can't pick it up. But you can see it with the same principle in different places. And when you look at it, not zoomed in, because you painting the details to look at zoomed out and like having complexity there. So that's a big difference. Like if I toggle that eye detail, you can see, hopefully, that it comes alive a lot more. Pakoda, when we're upgrading my camera? Well, I guess I'll order something. Anyways, this is the stupid drawing that I actually didn't end up drawing anything on, but nevertheless, it's a warm-up, right? So there's a lot of these subtleties, Rooney, that you have to focus on. I think the painting itself is really good. It's very clean. We understand it very well. There's small things that breaks the image. So if you tackle these, I think your painting will be significantly better. It's a really good one. Yeah, there's just small things you need to adjust to make it even better. That's good, Rooney. Hopefully it'll help. Hopefully it'll make it better. Let's find someone to raid. Should we raid Tim Remmers today? Yeah, let's raid Tim. Crosshatch. Well, my pleasure, my pleasure. All right, anyways, have a good one, everyone. Good night, have a great day. Happy Friday. We're going to raid Tim Remmers, and I'm going to do the outro, then take you to the raid, so don't go anywhere, just join the raid. See you on Discord. See you on Monday morning for another study. Have a good one. Toodles.